except this, you know, this last year, but not on track. So I didn't even look at the calendar. So this morning I was looking at it and trying to figure out what I needed to adjust. And I'm not sure if your quizzes, it says they're due November 5th. I need to go in and I need to look at that due date and make sure that those are, I heard my pencil accent back there. Yeah, that due date. I grew up in Texas, so I can draw a little bit. Let me make this bigger for you. So I'll check that. Has anybody looked to see if you can get into those quizzes for Unit 2? Has anyone checked? You're like me, you're just kind of like trying to take care of today and not worry about tomorrow yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we are here, October 24th, intra-war years, the rise of Hitler. We're on track, okay? One of the main reasons we're on track is because we were out and we just didn't watch the film, right? So I love movies. I like historical movies and I like showing them in class. So as much as I love this classroom and the technology that doesn't like make us go into seizures because it's like a disco ball, as much as I love the board, the one thing that I don't like about this classroom and the one that's right above it is that we have all this wonderful light that I typically love coming in. But I taught last semester in 304, which is right above here with the same setup. And whenever I tried to show a movie or a documentary, because of all the light, there was too much light. That was the most dainty, delicate set of tweezers I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, I think we can now, Daddy. It's just really delicate. Whenever I would show a documentary or a film, you just couldn't see it because there's so much light coming in, so it was just all black. So here's what we are going to do. And then here is a vote that I'm going to leave up to the class, and we will vote on it on Wednesday. But I want to talk to you about it today. I do want to have some films and or documentaries available to you, but what I'm going to do is make them extra credit and have a list for you, or you can select one that you like that is of your choice that you can watch on your own and not in this classroom, okay? And what I'll do is I'll find some that are on YouTube, so they're free. If you have Hulu or if you have Netflix and you have a subscription to something that you want to use something like that, then that's fine, you can do that too. But I don't want to make an extra credit opportunity available and then make you have to pay $4.99 to get extra credit. That's just not right. So what I'm going to do is find some documentaries and some films for y'all to watch, and you watch it on your own time, and then I'll have some questions and you can write a short essay on it for extra credit. We all love extra credit, right? Here's what this does to our schedule, and it can be it's a good thing. So, for example, October 31st and November 3rd, we were scheduled to watch the movie Batman and Little Boy. Y'all know what Batman and Little Boy is? With the bombs, right? It's about the making of those nuclear bombs. But we can't watch them in class. So that leaves 2 days. Right? See where I'm going?
Here's the thing, like, I feel like watching the movie wouldn't be too bad in here. I mean, the projector is looking fine.
Well, I've tried it, and it doesn't work. And I can try it again with those, and I did it with several of them last semester. There's just so much light coming in, and there's no blinds to pull down over those windows. And it's everybody bring a blanket and put it over the window. And after class, what I could do, or Wednesday, I can try to pull that film up and see if that one will work in this classroom. I'm gonna try it right now.
But back,
Um,
yeah, what were you saying about?
Fat Man and Little Boy?
Yeah.
It's, Fat Man and Little Boy were the names of the atomic bombs that were dropped on.
Well, yeah, I know that, but you were saying before I interrupted you. Before I used.
Oh, we have 2 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay,
It's a
Colin.
Monday.
You just take us wherever you want to take us in conversation. We'll follow. You got that going for me. So whatever y'all want to talk about, but Colin is he's the man today. So we have those 2 days. If I can't get that film to work in here, and I will try, and maybe we can watch it in class. But here's what I'm going to propose: is we have those 2 extra days as cushion days, and we take them off, right? And we don't come to class. Did you see that? And you can sleep in and watch the film for extra credit whenever you want to do that. Now, here's the choice. So do you want to come to class and watch them in class, or do you want to watch them on your own?
Watch them later.
Colin's kind of like trying to rethink. Why did I say it can work? We can make it work. Colin's going, why did I say that?
Oh crap. Oh.
Colin will be in class next week. So here's what I was thinking. And I'm going to leave this up to a popular vote. We're going to be in democracy. It'll be 51% versus 49%, and we'll vote on Wednesday. Do we want to have the days off here now, right? Or do we want to push forward? Just take these 2 days off of the books, have our exam here when we're ready to have the exam. We have another film here. Do we want to give ourselves cushion time and days off at the end of the semester?
Days off then would be easier than days off now.
So what you're asking us to you want us to have cushion days now or have them later? Is that what you're asking us?
We'll vote on it on Wednesday.
All right.
We'll do a secret ballot. So people aren't mad at anybody. Like, why did you vote for that? There's advantages to vote, right? I mean, are y'all tired right now? Tired right now. Are you going to be tired at the end of the semester?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
We're going to be really tired and busy at the end of the semester, right? So let's think about how we want to do that. We do have that film scheduled for the 3rd unit, which will give us some extra days, which we can take off at the end of the semester. So we could have some time now. See how far we get today. Have a day or 2 off now, and then have a day or 2 off later. Or we can pile them all up at the end. Make sense? Any thoughts? Any campaigning anyone wants to do from the floor? And then we'll talk about it and vote on it on Wednesday. And I really would like you to do the extra credit. I mean, there's good info out there that, and it's a lot. I like to supplement. I don't like to just stand up here and hammer at you all the time. But so documentaries are good and films are good. Anyone have any comments that you want to talk about the pros and cons? Make your point.
I think the extra credit would be helpful.
Extra credit will be very helpful, always.
And the break.
When do we want breaks? Do we want a break, at least a little break coming up in the next week or so? And then a little break at the end of the semester, or a bigger break at the end of the semester?
Oh. I mean,
I
okay.
know it's a hard
Is
one.
it
Everybody's like, what?
like some of the pros I see is like we're coming back from fall break, and a lot of people are coming back from out of town or something like that. We use the break okay. So when did you plan having like the first break? When did you plan that? Next week. Next week. So people might see some
Break
benefit.
would be next week. It would be, it would either be Monday and Wednesday or Wednesday.
That is tough.
Jack's voting for the end of the semester,
I mean, I
or
think
at least campaigning for the end of the semester.
that's good. Man. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's definitely.
think about it, okay, Jaden, just to fill you in, we have films scheduled in here, we're on track, because we didn't watch the first film, and I'll make that first film an option for you, on Native Americans. It'll be stuff that I can find on YouTube, things like that. But this room, because of the light, movies don't work in here. I tried to show some great like blockbuster films last semester, and we could just hear it. We could not see it. It was frustrating for students and me. So what we're going to be voting on Wednesday in class is we're going to take those days off, and you'll have a free day. And I'm going to offer some films and some documentaries as extra credit to watch and do on your own. So we're going to be deciding on Wednesday whether or not we want to have a little bit of a break next week, either, and it depends on how far I get, just Wednesday off or Monday and Wednesday off, or if we want to take those days, that at least that 1 or 2 days, and add it to the end of the semester and give ourselves a break at the end of the semester. And what I can do is I can like do like here would be option A and what it would look like, and then here would be option B and what it would look like for Wednesday. And then we'll vote on option B. Okay? It's not a bad. You win, all right? We win either way. We win either way. And I knew when we were coming over to this room, I was like, oh yes, I like this room. And I was like, oh darn it, I don't like this. I love the light. I hate the light. Okay, so think about that. Decisions. Today. So I'm gonna have to explain how this is set up. We are using this really big outline here. The US and both world wars. Okay. So here's where we are right now. We're getting ready to talk about the Paris Peace Conference. And then I've got the interwar era and the rise of Hitler and World War II. On a separate outline prior to this, we have the interwar years, the Great Depression, which is what we're going to talk about today. So as you're looking at that U.S. and the World Wars outline, just remember that this gets plugged in there, okay? I just haven't taken the chance. I'm going to go back to this outline that we were working from here. And when we left off on Wednesday, we had talked about Wilson's 14 points, right? Especially the League of Nations that he creates. Don't know what I'm doing. Too much. Too many good things. So, when we left off, we were talking about the Paris Peace Conference, and the war, World War I, ends in 1919. And we had talked about U.S. coming into the war, the Lusitania, the unrestricted submarine warfare that Germany was engaged in, right? And so that pulls the United States in. The war itself was 1914 to 1919. The United States comes in 1917. So we are not in the war for very long, but the U.S. sends tons of troops in, and honestly, it does so much for ending the war. Wilson is bringing the proposal to the table of peace without victory, right? Which actually was peace with no loser, right? And we talked about the salute. That's really cool. So Wilson becomes this, President Wilson of the United States becomes this voice for ending the war. So the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, leaders from around the world involved in the war meet in Paris to discuss the end of the war. And remember, Wilson's peace without victory, peace with no loser. I think we mentioned this last Wednesday. Was there a great big loser in World War I?
Yes.
And it was
Germany.
Germany. So there are a couple of important points in the peace treaty that I want to highlight. And yay for Colin for getting this set up for us. I have them here for you. Let's hope it works now. Okay. There's a way to zoom in. Okay. So there are 4 articles that I want to talk about here. And the first one is Article 42. Let me find my marker. What Article 42 does? Germany is forbidden to maintain or construct any fortifications either on the left bank of the Rhine or on the right bank to the west. It creates a buffer zone. In a region called the Rhineland. And I did not look to see if I've got a ton of maps and I want to show the Rhineland here. And I did not think that was going to work, so I didn't pull it. But indulge me for a minute and let me find it here. This one I have to. That one will work.
So is the Rhineland like this area where it's like it was like naturally impenetrable?
The Rhine, it's the land that's around the Rhine River that separates Germany from France.
Oh.
So let me see if I can find a good map. If not, I have one that will work. It's not the best, but it will work. Here, okay. All of my, not the whole section. There, it might help if it's not upside down. See Germany? Purple, great big Germany. And then France over here. Germany had invaded France already a couple Alps, right? And so the French are really, really nervous. So we've got this purple and white striped area. This becomes known as the Rhineland. And this is created as a result of that Paris Peace Conference. This is one of the things that it does. And this is one of the ways, and this one is kind of a minor way in making Germany pay, right? But it is naming in this Paris Peace Conference, it was a world war, right? I mean, I don't even know how many countries, I'd have to look it up, were involved in World War I. But who was named the number one aggressor? Germany, right? So it creates, Article 42 creates this buffer zone. And this territory around the Rhineland, separating Germany from France, was created. And so we have this separate buffer state, and it had to be demilitarized, so Germany could not bring any troops or any tanks in there. No military in the Rhineland. And Article 42 in the peace conference, peace treaty, says that the Allied troops were going to guard that and be stationed there for 15 years, just to make sure Germany is not going to march on France again, right? Germany, the aggressor. So Germany is forbidden to maintain or construct any fortifications on either the left bank of the Rhine or on the right bank to the west, right? Skip Article 119, we're not going to talk about that. Article 160. By a date which must not be later than March 31st, 1920, the German army must not exceed 100,000 men, including officers. The army shall be devoted exclusively to the maintenance for order within the territory. So Germany is ordered to demilitarize. Reduce your army. Reduce any military weapons. I'm going out of order here, but at least from our outline. Article 231. The Allied and associated governments affirm, and Germany accepts the responsibility of Germany and her allies. So Germany is not just taking responsibility for what Germany did. Germany's also taking responsibility for what Germany's allies did. Isn't that what that says? Yeah. The Allied and associated governments affirm, and Germany accepts the responsibility of Germany and her allies for causing all the loss and damage. So who is responsible for everybody who was killed and everything that was lost in World War I?
Germany.
Germany. For causing all the loss and damage to which the Allied and associated governments and their nationals have been subjected as a consequence of war imposed upon them by the aggression of Germany and her allies.
Why is Germany referred to as well? Is it just the way it's written, or is it just?
Typically, nations are referred to as like the motherland. Germany is unique though because Germany called themselves like the fatherland. But this is just kind of the language that's typical. Like the United States and her allies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. This becomes known as the war guilt clause because Germany has to say, we're responsible for it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all our fault. And in essence, what are they doing? Right? They're putting the great big loser sign on their forehead. For the losers, right? So they're demilitarized. They have to take on the war guilt. They've got this buffer created between them and France because they're so aggressive. And then Article 232, and obviously there's a lot of articles, right? Because we're already up to 232. But we're just picking out 4 as an example of what happens. So Article 232 becomes known as, so we have the Rhinelands created, the demilitarization, the war guilt clause, and then reparations. And Article 232 refers to reparations. The Allied and associated governments require, and Germany undertakes, that she will make compensation for what proportion of the damage done? All. All damage done to the civilian population of the Allied and associated powers and to their property during the period of the belligerency of each as an allied or associated power against Germany. Germany has to pay for all of the damage done.
Which was like $800 billion or something like that, right? It was something dumb.
Yeah, it was, 2 years later, they set the dollar amount and it was $33 billion.
Oh, 30, okay, I was more
33 billion.
money they didn't have.
Money they didn't have, and $33 billion in 1921 was a lot more than $33 billion.
Oh, I might be right. I say 800 billion. That's pretty close, right?
I don't know how it would translate into dollar amounts today, but $33 billion then is not $33 billion
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So, as much as Wilson, when he went into the war, and we want to, in this class, we're looking at the war from the United States perspective, right? We have to know what's going on with the war as a whole, but we want to focus on the U.S. Side of the war. Wilson goes in with that peace without victory, so that the United States and Britain and the other allies are not going, we are the winners, because if we have someone going, we're the winners, then you are the
Losers.
right? So peace without victory. And what do we end up having here? We have peace with victory, right? We have peace with Germany coming out as the losers. Their economy is devastated. Have they been damaged by the war? Their civilian population, their country has been devastated too. So they're taking on the war guilt. They're taking on reparations. They're demilitarizing. They've got the Rhineland. The Rhineland doesn't really hurt them. It's just kind of like a punishment, right, for what they've done. And Germany comes out pretty devastated. There's a political cartoon that
I was trying to find one too. I had this one saved that said World War I in a nutshell. And there's a bunch of people in suits that fit each of the countries, and they acted out what happened. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever watched.
Yes, pull up those, just Google World War I or Paris Peace Conference. Political cartoons, and you can find some really good stuff.
This was more of a homemade. It just said World War I in a nutshell.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
pretty funny.
Here's one from the time, and it's, I don't know if you can see it, but we've got this old farmer here, right? And he's got a whip, and he's trying to make this horse pull that wagon, right? And he's come on, Nelly, let's get going. I don't know what the horse's name is, right?
Oh,
And look at what the horse is hauling. The wagon is so heavy with unlimited indemnity, right? they have an unlimited amount of debt, so much debt that they're carrying, that the horse isn't even on the ground. But what are the Allied powers over here doing? Come on, get going.
I'm pretty sure it's not a horse.
The mule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's ass.
And it just literally can't, right? As much as they would like Germany to pay, Germany is just so devastated. See how they did the Maine? They wrote Germany with the Maine
Mhm.
on the mule, the donkey, the ass. And it literally cannot pull the load. Just way too much. Okay, so we're going to come back to this. I want to go to boring, depressing stuff called the depression. So, let me get organized here. So some of these we're not going to really highlight. There's some that I want you to know, and what I'll probably do is pull that identification list that we have study guide and really highlight the ones that I want you to know, because there are a ton of things that go along with this, and we're not going to focus on it all. But 1920s, the United States comes out of the war, 1919. The war is over, and the 1920s hit, and it is a decade of prosperity for the United States. When we think of the 1920s, what's the phrase that we typically use?
Oh my God, Roaring 20s.
The
Yeah.
roaring 20s, right? The economy is just roaring. And what is the image that we think of when we think of
Parties, stocks,
parties? Stocks are like what? Like
alcohol.
alcohol, yeah.
Mm.
Speakeasies. The flapper,
Oh.
right? Right? The girls with the shimmy dresses and the beads and the partying it's this era that has this image. It wasn't all like that, right? But it has this image of great wealth, of happiness and parties, and life is good, right? The roaring 20s, this decade of prosperity. It's like, what can go wrong? We're out of the war, life is good, and things are gonna be great forever. But they weren't, right? In 1929, October 24th, oh my word,
That's today.
that's today.
Wow.
Wow.
That's scary because when I was looking at this today, I was like, oh, because what's happening with our stock market right now? And experts are like going, we go like, ooh, I'm watching my retirement portfolio. I'm not retiring anytime soon, let me tell you, because it's like, it goes down, down.
Crypto's still doing great.
Huh?
Crypto's still doing great.
Crypto, yeah, a lot of people are predicting that silver's going to go way high. So I don't know, but the economy is kind of bad, and experts are saying that we are in for a big crash
Again?
again. Yeah,
Remember 08?
yeah, I remember 08.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think 08 will look like child's play compared to what we're in for here. I hope they're wrong. I hope, like tomorrow, everything's like fine and dandy, and we're like, oh, yay, and everything comes roaring back, and I'll retire like, woo, tomorrow, because I'll just have so much money in my portfolio. But I don't think so. But yeah, October 24th. I did not look at that date. I just it's just right then, and I didn't say that.
Mhm.
So Thursday morning, October 24th, 1929. Panic set in. It's called Black Thursday. Stocks launched. losses were $3 billion. So stock prices fell. The next week, on that next Tuesday, it was even worse. Stockholders in 1929 lost $10 billion in one day. So the stock market, not each stockholder lost $10 billion, but as a whole, the stock market plunged. So this was a huge hit for the economy, obviously. And I know y'all have studied the Great Depression. I'm sure you've studied it in your history classes. When y'all have history, like 4th grade, 7th grade?
You talk about like this history in general.
In school? Like,
I had U.S. history and as a junior,
8th grade?
sophomore, junior.
So I'm sure you all studied the Great Depression. We're not gonna. No.
That was when COVID was going on, so.
Oh yeah, he's right.
That's true. Like no one learned anything then. No. Don't get me started on that because it makes me mad. It makes me mad. But anyway, okay. So we'll learn it all brand new again here today. And we're gonna do like the Great Depression in a nutshell because it certainly is depressing. So Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, great crash. I hope history doesn't really repeat itself because now I don't want to watch the news. Oh, it hurts. So economists, historians, people have struggled with trying to figure out what caused the stock market to plunge and what hurt it so bad. Quite a few theories that are out there, and some people sharply disagree with each other. So my point is, there's no one set answer, right? In history, there are these theories over here, and these people look at history's interpretation, right? What historical facts, historical data is, we know that the stock market crashed on October 24th, 1929. We know that, right? Can anyone dispute that? What is under dispute is why. And this is the way all of history is. Why? Because what we have to do as historians and what we do as citizens is we look at the events around it and try to figure out what caused it. And these people over here look out at the same data and they go, wait a minute, it was this. And these people over here emphasize this data and go, no, it was this. Right? And I'm not an economist. And I look at this stuff and I go, I don't know what really caused the Great Depression and the stock market to fall and to crash. There are quite a few theories. So here's the two main camps, okay? Two main sides without getting into a lot of detail. Those who tend to believe that the government should have a large role in the economy. That's the one side. Those who believe that the government should have a large role in the economy. Believe that it was a failure of the free market. The free market meaning what?
The stock market.
The stock market, buyers and sellers,
Oh yeah.
businesses, consumers, right? Limited government regulations. So people who think that the government, it's true. And so they look at the fact that that the banking system needed to be overhauled, that big business got too big, consumer spending was way too high. People in the 20s were spending money like crazy, and people were going into debt. So there was a lot of consumer debt, and I hate debt, so I tell students every semester, stay out of debt. Run away from it, run away from it. If you have student loans, if you have debt, pay those things off so fast. Please, for your own good. But so it's, the free market, there's too much free market, there wasn't enough government intervention, and that's what the Great Depression happens. The government gets involved in the economy like never before. Government regulations just like skyrocket. And at first they were going to be emergency government regulations, and then they just faded. And then on the flip side of it, those who believe that the market should be open and the government regulation should be minimal believed that it was too much government intervention. See why it's really confusing? Like not enough government intervention, too little government intervention. I don't know. I personally, and I don't know that I'm right, I am not a fan of too much government intervention. That's just my personal point of view. But I don't know that I'm right. I don't know. What caused it? Unemployment was high, not enough. Those who hate big government said it was the Federal Reserve's fault for not, and it was far too complex for me to get into. But anyway, causes of the crash are still strongly debated. It depends on which economist that you follow. But the point remains, whichever side you fall on, big government intervention, limited government intervention, the economy did crash. Fact, right? Stock market fell, the economy took a big hit. For Herbert Hoover, who was the president at the time, and who had nothing to do with the crash. He becomes the scapegoat.
The what?
The scapegoat,
What's that?
he becomes, it's a slang phrase for the person who takes all the blame.
Oh, okay.
He's blamed for it all. He had very little to do with it, and when he came into the presidency, it was a time of great prosperity. And then the crash hits, and people are losing their jobs. Investors are losing their stock portfolios. We have investors are jumping out of buildings and committing suicide, right? A lot of economic pain, jobless. We have food lines. Couple this with what else is going on in the United States of America in the 1930s.
Oh, the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, that's going on too. That was not fun. Dr. Bernhardt hates that. What else is going on in the 1930s?
The Rise of Hitler.
The rise of Hitler outside of the war. Someone said it just a minute ago.
The Dust Bowl.
Dust Bowl.
Is that Kansas?
Kansas. The entire country, actually, there's a huge drought. The whole decade. A huge drought.
Oh, there's the name that I remember from middle school, the name of all the people who moved and where they moved to. There's a name for them.
Yes. Why can I not think of that?
That was seventh grade. Hold on, I'm trying to go
Yeah.
so far back.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
I can picture my seventh grade classroom learning that word.
Yeah, it'll come to me. But we have nearly an entire decade when it didn't rain. So out west, the Dust Bowl, literally, and it wasn't just out west, it was hitting the eastern United States too. This is like where we are over here, like east is over this way. And on the day that Congress is trying to decide what to do about the problem with the Dust Bowl, there were these dust storms, right? This is where the term the Dust Bowl comes from, because there's so much. I don't even know if I have this and talk about it in my class. This should be an outline, right? We should talk about the Dust Bowl. But these dust storms would blow up because farmers were heading out west, out in the Great Plains, where it was just tall grass, and there's no trees that grow out there. Why is it just tall grasses and no trees? What about the climate there creates just tall grasses and no trees?
Okies.
It's hot, is that what you said? And dry. There's not very much rain, right? So it doesn't rain as much. The Okies, yeah, and they're going to California to get jobs on farms out there. So the plains are typically pretty dry. Now, during the 1930s, they were drier than normal. I mean, we have no rain whatsoever. And in the 1920s, farmers are heading out west and they're plowing up that grass and they are having bumper wheat crops. And that was contributing to the booming stock market. They were making tons and tons of money because they were producing so much wheat. And during World War I, they were feeding the world. So we have these big farms that are being built out west in the Great Plains area and just replacing all of that grass with wheat, right? Because wheat is kind of like this. Right? So they're making a bunch of money. They're farming more and more and more of that land. And when there's rain, it's good. When there's not any rain and you plow the ground, what happens? And you plant seeds and there's no rain, what happens? Nothing. Literally, what does the ground look like? What kind of dirt? What does the dirt look like? If you were to pick it up, what would it feel like?
Like sand?
Like sand. Just dry, crumbly, right? So when a big wind hits, what happens?
It starts blowing.
Right? And they had these dust storms, literally where you could not see for miles and miles and miles. This like storms. And when Congress is sitting in Washington, D.C., trying to decide what to do about the Dust Bowl, a huge storm had blown up and was blowing this dust all the way across the country, literally into the halls of Congress. No joke. That's how bad it was. So we have this economic depression that has hit. We have the Dust Bowl. We have this decade of drought. Americans are without jobs. Investors are not doing so great, right? Because the stock market has plunged. The economy is really bad. And poor Herbert, try saying that 3 times, Herbert Hoover just got lucky enough to be elected president right before it all hit. So everybody starts blaming Hoover. And these shanty towns where people who've lost their homes, they're building shelters out of cardboard boxes and things like that. So we have these places where people are living on the street and people are like, oh, these are Hoovervilles. Right? Let's blame Hoover. Hoover did it. We always want to try to find someone to place the blame on, don't we? Did Herbert Hoover do this? But he goes down in history as kind of being a bad president because we have the Great Depression. So Hoover tries to stem the tide of the Great Depression. He tries to fix the economy and does what he can. And successful to a limited extent. And a lot of historians and economists, again, split on what fixes the Depression. We always talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR coming in with his New Deal plan, right? And this solves the Depression. Almost everyone agrees that it didn't end the Depression, but it provides relief for the American people and some form of recovery for the economy, which we're going to talk about some of these things. So Hoover, Franklin Delano Roosevelt replaces Herbert Hoover. I never can say his name right. And he is president, becomes the president in 1932. He jumps in and with Congress in the very first 100 days of his presidency. He says, okay, we're gonna like kind of do this rip-roaring thing, right? We're gonna pass all of these acts. We're going to attack this Great Depression. We're gonna attack this problem in the first 100 days. And the very first thing is he and Congress passed the Emergency Banking Act. Emergency Banking Act. He passes this, Congress passes it the day after he's inaugurated. So they were ready to roll with this, right? The first thing, and one of the problems with the Great Depression is that banks were failing. Did y'all ever see, I know it's not a real popular movie anymore, but I watch it every Christmas. It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. Remember the run on the bank when George, he's supposed to go on his honeymoon, and those of you who haven't watched it, you're probably going, what? And he's got all this money for his honeymoon, and his dad had this bank, this savings and loan bank, and it was right with the great crash. And when everybody realized that the economy was going down, all the people did what? They ran to the banks to pull out their money. And so George Bailey goes running in, and instead of spending his money on his honeymoon, he has all this cash, and he goes, hey, because people are coming in. It's called the run on the banks, right? And so people are trying to draw their money out. And they were like, I have $300 here. How much do you need for the next week? Take 30, right? So banks were failing because do the banks keep all of your money and everybody else's money in them? They don't. So if we all went to the bank to get all of our money out on the exact same day, not everybody's going to get all of their money that they put in the bank, right? So when we had this run on the banks and people started pulling out their money and then there was no money left, what did the banks have to do, right? You have 100 people with money in the banks. People 1 through 12 came in and they got their money. 13 came in and they wanted their money, and what happened?
They couldn't do it.
Panic. Right? Panic. People panicking in the streets, running out. I can't get my money. And the banks do what? Because they're panicking, right? Because people are coming in like, give me my money, give me my money, right? You got like my whole life savings, give me my money. So we have all this panic, and the banks are literally shutting their doors, and they're going out of business. They're shutting down. And so Roosevelt and Congress were like, we've got to solve this. So the Emergency Banking Act goes into place the day after his inauguration, and it shuts down the banks for 4 days. Officially, formally tells every bank, shut down for 4 days. Started what became known as fireside chats. I think they were every Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening. And he would get on the radio and he would talk to the American people about what was going on. Fireside chats. And it was like, and he called them the fireside chats because what kind of image does that evoke? What do you think of when you think of a fireside chat? Are you stressed? No. I like sitting by a fire. There's something nice about sitting by a fire, right? You've got a fireplace on. We love to have fires in my fireplace at home, and it's nice and it's warm and it's cozy, and every once in a while you get some marshmallows going, right? Some s'mores, and it's comfortable and it's relaxing and it's calm and it feels what?
Makes you forget your government doesn't care about you.
It makes you feel like the government does care about you, right? Because you've got your president who's saying, it's okay, people, there's no need to panic. It's gonna be okay. This is what's going on, and this is what we're doing about it. And we like that phrase that says knowledge is power, right? Because if you feel like you're left in the dark and it's scary and your bank is closed and you don't know what's going on then what do you feel like? Panicky, right? But the bank is closing and you don't have your money, but you've got your president coming on every week and he's like, okay, this is what we're doing now. It's gonna be okay. And you go, okay. Right? Right? So he starts these fireside chats and he tells the American people in the first one, talking about the Emergency Banking Act, and he calls it not the shutdown of the banks, right? He calls it the banking holiday. We're having a bank holiday. Now, what does that make you feel like? Do you love or hate holidays?
Love them.
You love them. Having a holiday. Go to school, go to work, right? It's happy. So we have a bank holiday, and people and truly Americans just kind of like got it in gear, and they're like, okay, they started trading in like script, like just whatever currency they kind of like, hey, I'll exchange this for you, right? And they were trading services instead of, I need a plumber, I don't have any money. I need a plumber, what do you need, right? And so trading services and kind of really there was this unity that is created in this time, and Roosevelt was able to put down that panic, something he was really, really good at, and keeping the American public together. So the banks closed for 4 days, and as people were having this holiday, I'm like, okay, we're going to get through this, the government went into action to try to protect the banks and support the banks that were having so much trouble. So what the Banking Act did, it closes down the banks for 4 days, and it provided federal assistance to banks who were in trouble. Provides federal support to banks who were in trouble. So those that were doing okay, they were allowed to reopen, and the government said, okay, we're going to support you, go ahead and reopen. Those who were really hit hard, the banks that were really hit hard, were given named conservators, people in a group that would provide support and help that bank get, right, and it's government conservators to get that bank back up and running. Because, and the banks were really, really thin. And this is why a lot of people after the Depression, people are like, oh, my grandmother after the Depression, where did grandma start saving her money? In the banks? Under the mattresses, right? Putting it somewhere where it was safe, because banks were no longer considered safe. We needed to have faith that our money was going to be okay. If you don't have faith that your money's going to be okay, then things are pretty bad, right? So shoring up the banks and making sure the banks were okay puts the American people at rest, right? Calms them down. What happens if people are panicking and afraid that there's no way out of it? What might people do? What might happen? Worst case scenario, if everybody's mad and scared. We might have massive protests, right? We might have mass panic in the streets. Wouldn't that be lovely? Not for anybody, right? So assuring the Americans people that their money is okay, their livelihood. If your money's not okay, how are you going to eat tomorrow? Pretty basic, right? So the banks were critical, and that's why Roosevelt and Congress, that's the very first thing they do, because they need to make sure that people know that their money is going to be okay, and keep people calm. So troubled banks were given over to conservators, and then it and then I'm going to go. I'll talk about reform, relief, and recovery in just a minute. They passed the Glass-Steagall Banking Act because this kind of goes alongside. It follows that the Emergency Banking Act. The Glass-Steagall Banking Act. Is one of the main things that it does is it creates federal insurance for your deposits. Creates the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which we typically call you ever see that on your bank statement? You ever see it on the envelope when you get money out of the bank? Backed by the FDIC. What does this do? Insurance, right? Initially, it insured anybody's deposits up to $100,000. So you knew if you put your money up to $100,000, and that number has increased because this was in 1932. So it's $250,000 now. You put $250,000 in your bank. That's has Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation behind it, then you're insured. You're going to get that money out. Don't put $251,000 in because you're only insured up to $250,000. Get another bank for the next $250,000, right? So this insures you if there's a run on it keeps the run on the bank from happening, right? This says that the federal government is going to back up, this insurance corporation is going to back up that bank, knowing that those banks don't have everybody, they don't keep everybody's $250,000. Let's just say everybody puts $250,000 in the bank. I don't have $250,000 in the bank. That's a lot of money, right? But some people have $250,000 in a bank. If everybody has $250,000, the bank is not keeping all of that money there, right? They're investing it, they're loaning it, they're doing all sorts of things with that money. So if everybody runs on that bank and says, I want my $250,000, not everybody is going to get it. Maybe the first 5 people, 8 people, I don't know how much money they keep in their bank vaults. But if you go in, we're like, the government's backing us, right? if you need your $250,000, we can't get it for you today. It's like when you go to the bank, you can't withdraw more than $1,000. I think is like typical
But it was 10,000.
What is it?
10,000.
10,000?
Yeah.
There's a limit to how much you can withdraw in one day. Is it 10,000? Okay. So they're like, okay, that's the minimum amount or maximum amount that you can get. And if you want more than that, you have to give us advance notice because then we have to go get that money, right? Because we don't have all of this cash sitting here.
I just read a funny post the other day about a little old lady going into a bank and she told them she'd like 1,000. And they said, well, we've got people in line who use an ATM for that. Or no, she said, I want $10. And they said, well, that's small, go to the ATM. We've got people in line. She said, okay, I'd like 1,000. So we gave it to her. She said, I'll put $9.90 back in my account.
Oh. There you go. Always a way to get around it, right? Yeah, that's funny. So the Glass-Steagall Banking Act creates this FDIC. And then Congress creates the Securities Exchange Act, or the SEC, in 1934. Which was created to oversee and regulate the stock market. I wonder what they're doing today. So, in theory, if all of this stuff works, we shouldn't have another stock market crash, right? Just thought about that. Why is this all going on? Anyway, so when we come back on Wednesday, because I don't want to jump too much into this, I'm going to do the rest of it pretty quickly, and then we'll jump into the rise of Hitler. But essentially, the three main things that the Congress, that Roosevelt and Congress does, there's three things they want to do. They want to reform the economy. And the Emergency Banking Act, the Glass-Steagall Banking Act, the Security Exchange Act is one of the ways that they are reforming the economy. We need to restructure it in order to make sure it works from here on out. Don't know that it does from here on out. So they want to reform the economic system. And then when we come back on Wednesday, we'll talk about relief. The relief portion of it is to provide relief to the American people and the American consumer, especially the unemployed. Because a lot of people lose their jobs. And then the third portion of, and all of these, and I don't have it on the outline, and I don't know why, because all of these things, reform, recovery, relief, all of these acts are known as Roosevelt's New Deal. This is New Deal legislation. I got a new deal for you. Right? And then recovery is the planning and the cooperation with businesses. So we have reforming the economy, relief for the civilian, and offering recovery for businesses. And we'll talk a little bit more in general in that. Think about how we want to do those film days. I will try to sit down and map out what it would probably look like. And then maybe when you see that, I didn't know that things are like that, but I would like that. Might be nice to kind of have a little break here and then a little break later. But then a big break later. I don't know. Okay? See you all on Wednesday.